What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Game Dev Unchained, #1 podcast on game development and the lifestyle thereof. Please welcome our special guest this week, Ewan Croft. Ewan, if you don't mind, can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Ewan Croft. I'm a game developer. I am currently freelance. I do effects, dynamic simulations, and things like that. I'm in Marin County. I started out in art outsourcing. Moved to a big studio publisher for about a decade and went freelance about 2 years ago.
Nice. How's that going so far for you, man?
And it started off a little scary at first. You know, I thought it was going to be just a walk in the park, but it was like crickets for the first couple of weeks. But it started picking up, and I started getting some good clients, and now it's going pretty well.
What was, if you don't mind me asking, what was your first, I guess, course correction when you basically had crickets and you're like, well, this ain't gonna work? So what did you do to generate business?
First thing is I kind of want to take a little time. So I actually, strangely enough, became a scuba instructor of all things, and was kind of filling the time doing that. That actually ended up opening some really interesting doors, a lot of travel and things like that. But what happened was I got a call from, of all people, ILM. And as an effects artist, that's definitely a call you're going to be very happy to get. So I got a gig over there, did a few movies over there, and that definitely helped out. That's a good name to have on your reel, and some big shots from ILM definitely doesn't hurt.
Oh, nice. So the trick is get ILM to give you work, and then you're indie.
Well, actually, they didn't give me work. I had a very good friend who had been there for a long time, knew I was freelance. He never said a word to me, but a very, very dear friend, Lee, great guy. He had been there for 13 years, done some big work there. And he made a phone call without saying a word to me, and that's really what started it. So I'll be forever grateful to that friend. You know, it was, but to be honest, I think the two are converging like at a really rapid pace. So when in the last few years at 2K, we were starting to use movie tools, specifically Houdini, to do a lot of our dynamics and simulation work and spectacle event stuff. So working on those pipelines, it kind of got me familiar with some of the movie stuff. And I'd also started doing a lot of heavy training because I really felt that games were starting to approach movie quality, or at least the expectation is there. And so I sort of, done a fair amount of self-study. But yeah, getting there, it's a very different culture. And, just things as low level as going from Windows to Linux took a few days to get my head around. But they do a very good job of onboarding you. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, it is a bit different. But to be honest with you, I think it's harder going from film to games than games to film. And obviously in film, you don't have to worry about performance and things like that. And that's just something in game development we live in. It wasn't that bad. And I had already kind of front loaded it a little bit. So.
So what about, you're saying going from games to film, you find is the easier of the two? I guess, what are the
I think it is.
As someone making that transition?
Right. I think the visual fidelity expectations in film are obviously a lot higher. And also like the numbers were just crazy. And then effects artists, I'm throwing around particles in Unreal, right? Yeah. And the numbers like, whoa, he's throwing around, 500. And now going over there, it's like 20 million, So It's like kind of a, obviously it scales up by orders of magnitude, but the core of it is pretty similar. I mean, a good film effect has a lot of the same qualities as a good game effect. So, anticipation and punch and weight and things like that. So the similar principles apply. And I know a lot of great film people who have done transition to games and are doing great game work. But I think it is a shock to the system going from, having a huge render farm to do stuff and all of a sudden trying to get your stuff to run on an Xbox.
Yeah,
that can be a rude awakening, and I've seen some people, some film folks, kind of struggle with that transition. But that's for that reason, I think it's a little bit easier to go from games to film.
Oh, cool. Well, what were some of the? Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
Well, like obviously, when you were transitioning, there's like a whole conversation with family, like looking at the results and then preparing, basically a lifestyle that can change and fluctuate, right? So that's probably, I would say, the hardest conversation with the wife.
in the children's, like, hey, things are not going to be as good for a little while, right?
Yeah.
Was that just cushioning the fall?
I chose wisely. My wife is an absolute badass. Beautiful, smart, funny, and and she. I came home. I'd been at 2K for almost 10 years. That's a long time, and I kind of said, I was like, I want a life less ordinary. I've been doing this. Am I doing this? Am I staying here because I'm comfortable? Am I staying here because I'm scared to try to venture out? If that doesn't scream midlife crisis, I don't know what does. But she was she was amazing. She was like, dude, you're going to land on your feet. And also there were some practical matters. She's has a very accomplished career. So she was able to, use her insurance for the family and things like that. So it did make things a little bit easier, but she was totally supportive, 100%. Then I come home, like, I'm going to start teaching scuba diving and traveling. And she was totally, supportive of that too. And so, I guess I chose well, and it made that transition a little easier.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Well, the scuba diving is like, I never knew that you had that skill set in the back end. Do you feel like that was a necessary thing to kind of be able to risk averse, to have multiple things to juggle with, just in case, as a side thing or not?
So anybody who's a dive instructor out there knows that it's not going to make you any money. It's really a labor of love. And it also was something physical and very different. We sit in front of computers, 10, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
So it was a nice balance to this computer lifestyle. I love art. My primary vocation is doing art. But it really wasn't a matter of hedging bets financially. It was more of kind of, again, pursuing that life less ordinary. And really, all I do now is I teach clients, like very specialized clients, usually at their homes. But the travel is the big deal. I'm starting to lead trips. So it was, Bonaire in February. It'll be Fiji in October, Yucatan in February, Turks and Caicos in June. So it kind of opened this door to this life less ordinary. Again, I was working at a big studio, maybe one vacation a year, working on holidays a lot of the time. So it was really taking advantage of the freedom you get from freelancing. But that, again, was a transition. When I started getting, a lot of work, I had a really hard time turning it off. And it was just pendulum swung the exact other way. Before I'm working at a studio and under a lot of stress. And now I didn't know how to turn it off. So I'm at home applying a lot of stress to myself and doing, just working way too much, not getting out from behind the machine. And so the scuba diving, I started a business called Soul Seeker, and that just is a nice counterpoint or a balance to Airship, which is my effects and simulation freelance gig. But it really wasn't a matter of hedging bets in terms of like supporting the family. It's not going to do much for you there. It's a lot of fun.
If you compare the two, though, right? Because it seems like you had two businesses which were, hey, this is something that I'm going to offer. Here's how I acquire my customers. Then I go out and do the thing. You had like a rinse and repeat kind of business.
Yes.
Okay. Was that the plan in going freelance, or did you just find that ended up being what was most effective?
Totally random, man. I had been freelance before, and I had a mentor way back in the day who kind of taught me how to be freelance.
Okay.
He was an amazing dude, very, very good friend, taught me a ton. And he taught me the basics, like time tracking, billing, how to talk to clients about money, how to talk to clients about, work, how to get feedback. So I sort of had some experience freelancing, and that's why it wasn't quite as daunting. But it was, it was quite a transition.
Yeah.
For the scuba diving, it was way different. It was just like, I just like this, I can, it's physical, it's healthy, I love being in the ocean. And so before I was in an office all the time working, and then on the weekends I was exhausted and didn't want to do anything. And now I'm like working freelance in front of the computer quite a bit, but then the weekends I'm in Monterey or in Tahoe. We just got back from Tahoe this weekend. My 11-year-old just got certified. He's a little badass.
Oh, nice.
But I also started shooting video and applying the same visual creativity we use in game development to shooting travel videos and drone footage and underwater and cutting little adventure videos. And so now I'm starting to document the trips and make little adventure videos for the trips. So it's a totally different world. But when I get burned out on effects, I can kind of shift gears and go over to that. When I start getting tired of that and tired of being sandy and salty, I can, come back to my company studio and do some computer graphic.
Well, then the next big question for me, because I know a lot of people in the audience probably have the same fear, which is when you go freelance, how you get paid and your taxes and everything is a completely different ball game than when the government was like essentially taking their cut before you got paid, so you had less to worry about. Now it's like, oh, I need to make sure I save almost 50% of everything I'm making because I have no idea what the tax is going to be. Can you walk me through, I guess, how that
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. That's a really, really key point. So anybody who's gone freelance, and luckily I did this early in my career, but if you've gone freelance, you probably made the mistake. You're 1099, you get a big check, and you think you'll pay the taxes later, and you might have gotten burned. I never got burned super bad, but I took that very early lesson from 20 years ago to heart, and I put away 40% of every dime I get. 1099 is very different than W-2, so you have to be careful about that.
Go ahead,
cool, yeah, no worries. So definitely that's a big part of it. In terms of getting paid, like one thing I learned early on is just talk directly with clients and be very honest about billing. I think a lot of new freelancers are really scared to talk about money, or they try to, justify their rates. And I think the signal that sends is they're not confident in their own work, or obviously you have to have the work to back it up. But I found that if you just really direct with clients, that helps a lot, and that you develop a trust pretty quickly. Also, if I get a client that's really difficult, right, they're giving you money for work. They're laggy on for that deal, it makes it a lot less fun. So luckily the clients I have now are really, really good. And also, man, times are changing. I send an invoice out and I get like a wire transfer in 45 minutes. It used to be like a 30-day net.
I was going to say, I remember net 30, net 60, net 90. And even then you're sending letters like, hey guys, for real, I need that money.
Exactly. And that was, that's kind of a drag. So I always try to really, especially to new clients, like, hey, this is quid pro quo and I'm going to be Johnny on the spot for you. But, you got to be Johnny on the spot for me too. And I do not want to, this is not a collections agency. So I stop work as soon as an invoice is late. I give a 15-day net. All the clients I work with now are like, it's crazy. They just, within the hour. So
wow.
Feels like
you must do excellent work.
No. I think that it's just gotten a lot easier. I mean, Zelly transfers and PayPal and things like that just make it a lot easier. And also, I think the clients today, I mean, it's not like they don't have, or they may, but it's not like there's some comptroller reading through paper invoices and cutting checks on a dot matrix printer anymore. I mean, things have definitely sped up. So it makes it a little bit easier, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a different ball game today.
It is. I mean, think about it. We meet, we video conference for just about everything. It's just all this stuff that makes it a lot easier to be a freelance artist now.
Well, speaking of, I'd like to jump in. This might be a great transition point too. Then is there like one single piece of software that has really made your freelance life, like, I don't know, you can say QuickBooks or whatever, but is there like a schedule tasker or a time tasker or any little tools that you could recommend to the audience listening right now that has significantly helped you manage your company as a freelancer?
Actually, to be honest with you, I'm not like, I use time tracking software and it didn't really, because I think one of the things that I'm doing is I'm jumping around a lot and working on a lot of different things. And so trying to time track by task wasn't, we're not making widgets. So, I use TurboTax, and that's worked actually really well. They have kind of a small business option, and that helps out a lot with taxes. So we were talking about 1099 and the tax burden kind of that you take on by going freelance. Well, there's also benefits. Like I deduct my office, I deduct my Xbox, I deduct all my games, so there's an upside to that as well. But I found TurboTax, they remember all my stuff from last year and repopulate everything. It certainly makes it easier. They walk me through, and the wizard's pretty good about asking me about deductions and trying to get me the most, but not really in terms of like office management. I don't have a huge number of clients. Typically have a 20-hour week contract or a 40-hour week contract, something like that. So it's not like I'm managing 30 different vendors or anything, or clients or anything like that.
Okay, fair enough.
So when was the point where you where the fear subsided? Right. Obviously, there's a point of before you jump in and while you're in it. With a lot of people that we have on, feels like there's a moment at least where you feel, hey, this is just a different way of thinking, more so than it being a dangerous path, right?
Right. Well, again, I think I was really lucky. I mean, my wife's a badass, and we were pretty smart. I was in the .com thing back in the day, and so we weren't really, it wasn't super risky.
Mm-hmm.
We were definitely risking a pretty cushy lifestyle, but that I found, I think we think it is earlier in life.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the fear subsided after a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. I mean, it was like from there, I had, the work really difficult to find work after that. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And there, you guys both been around for a long time. You build relationships and people develop trust. And that obviously didn't hurt either. When I went freelance when I was young, I didn't have that. And so I'm like, I have a good work ethic, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
But, now it's like people that work with you for 8 years, they know what you're about. And so I found that, available and freelance, they can add you to the team. It's fairly little risk. They can tell you to take a hike if they don't like you. The contracts are typically 3 months, 6 months, something like that. So the fear subsided after I put that new reel up and the phone started ringing.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So it sounds like everything worked out, right? So there's always that possibility at any point, which probably helps with the fact that you can always go back if you really want to basically that life, right? So that aside from the supporting wife in her career and all that stuff, there's really, once you really put all the cards on the table, there's no way that you're gonna feel slighted at any point, because you can always have that as a backup plan, right? So what is your advice to anyone that is at that point when you were at 2K, right? When you're thinking about doing things, what advice would you give them now, knowing what you know now? Because you were at that one point, obviously, there, and maybe talking to a few friends about this, but what was the one thing that they missed or really, or actually said that really rang true for you?
In terms of going freelance from the more stable kind of setup, it's life is just this journey of learning, and this journey of becoming humble and all these things. I figured out on the lesson was, if you're not passionate and love this, especially when these projects are now 3 and 4 years long, you need to make a move. You need to make that choice. And to be totally honest, I think we're all human. I mean, I was sticking around because was I scared to leave? Was I scared to try to do something different? Was I afraid I wasn't be able to hack it out here? All really valid questions. Advice I'd give is, obviously, be practical. You need to have a body of work, and it's very helpful if you can that you can call upon and say, hey, if you guys have, and if you need a little help, I'm definitely available to help you out. But I would say is freelancing, like, it sounds like it's just, oh my God, life is perfect, and I'm going scuba diving and blah blah blah. The fact of the matter is, there's always two sides to every coin. The downside of freelancing is it's very isolated. You VidCon with people and stuff, but like when I first started, before I started figuring it out, I mean, I was like, man, I just work all the time. I was by myself all the time. I come down here in my underwear, and it's just like, it was kind of crazy for a while, and it took time to figure it out. So, definitely if you decide to go freelance, make sure you keep those connections. I now go out to lunch a couple times a week with friends, many from 2K still. I really make a point to try to have a normal day, like get up, take a shower, like, and then I go to work in my home office, obviously. But that was another thing. Definitely be aware that when you do go freelance, there is the potential to be very isolated. And even today, like I may at some point, once I get this bug out of my system, go back to studio life. I miss the collaboration. I miss the camaraderie. I miss that esprit de corps of feeling like you're part of an elite team. So, there's really, it's a double-edged sword, but right now, I'm here. I'm like with my kid a lot. I'm able to spend a lot of time with him. We travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of great adventures, stuff I wouldn't be able to do if I had a normal W-2 job. You do. I would say, once you walk through a door, other doors present themselves, and you don't necessarily see those doors before you walk through it. So you have to cross that breach to actually see the opportunities that are in front of you. But without fail, like if you're passionate about what you do, you will be good at it.
Yeah.
If you have a work ethic and you work hard and you love this stuff, you will work hard at it. There is work out there. You'll do fine. But I don't want to say that cavalierly, because I would hate to say, oh yeah, go out there, and all of a sudden somebody's out there and they give up a good job and they end up in a tough spot. But everybody has to do that calculus for themselves. I felt the risk was worth it. I felt that it was time. I'd been at 2K for almost 10 years. So yeah, I don't know. It's a really hard call. And I think everybody is going to have their own challenges they're going to have to overcome if they decide to go independent. But again, I think the most important point is that you won't see the opportunities out there in front of you until you make that step. So it's a little risky, but I was actually pleasantly surprised by the way the world opened up as soon as I walked through that door.
Mm-hmm.
This might be a little too personal, so you don't have to say an exact amount, but did you prepare yourself with like a nest egg to kind of lean on when you went freelance? Or was it like a cold turkey, like, fuck it, it's tomorrow, and then I'm doing this?
Financially speaking, again, I've worked hard for a long time. And I've done a lot of different things. So we and I learned pretty quickly that it was a lot better to not have any debt than it was to have a super fancy car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So my wife is the same way. She's pretty practical, and she'd rather have a trip for the family than a piece of jewelry kind of thing. So we were fairly fortunate in the way we had conducted ourselves, that it wasn't super crazy. Like we weren't going to be out on the street or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But to be honest with you, when I did split, it was a very quick. It wasn't like I keyed and hawed for 2 years. It was like, I'm not, do I love this next project we're talking about? Maybe not so much. It's time. And again, then those other questions about like, am I staying here because I'm comfortable? Which is, if you're asking yourself that question, then it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And speaking of challenges, working in a home office presents things, like you said, that you didn't see before, right? Doors that you didn't walk through. Family, right. Seeing you always there, kids, seeing that you're always available, but the door's closed. Remember, I'm working. And it's like, really, Dad? Come on, let's hang out. So what's kind of boundaries were you, did you have to set to get everyone used to you being at home again, which is a whole different feeling?
Dude, that is a really, really funny point that you bring up, because that actually was really tricky. And I found myself like getting a little snippy at times. I'm like, guys, I'm working. This is like a normal job. This is not me goofing around, and so I do actually close the door. But I try to be with my kid. And my wife, but my kid's, he's going into middle school next year. It's just really good for me to be there, when he goes to school in the morning and when he comes home in the afternoon. He does give me a hard time for working a lot. You're like, oh, he's in your office, but I was trying to explain. I'm like, yeah, but I was gone at 6 a.m. till 7 p.m. every day. So I'm not sure it's something you can really be bummed about. But there's the, upsides to that too. Like, we got a nice garden and we plant all kinds of vegetables, and, so my wife and I'll go make a fresh caprese salad, tomatoes out of the garden and basil out of the garden, and then eat it outside, in the sun. And then I just go back to work, it's kind of cool. So there's upsides to it as well, but you're definitely right. I definitely had to set those boundaries. And I think I kind of got some crazy looks at first, like, whoa, dude, what's your problem? It was something I did have to kind of communicate clearly that, hey, this is my job. And I have to, if I'm not getting work done, then I'm not going to have this job for very long. So, but they took to it pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I know it's something that obviously you both had to deal with, because we've had our moments, just doing the podcast at Brandon's house, and his son's wanting to help out, so to speak. So, yeah, I don't know. I was just joking that you would like install a hot light, like, all right, if the light's red, don't come in. That's what I
Totally, man. That's a great idea. It hasn't been like that. Again, you know, my kid's in school. During the summer, he's at camp. He's a wicked little tennis player, too.
Yeah.
He's, you know, they're not around. I do have a lot of time here solo. So there's not a lot of distractions. But at 3 o'clock, things get a little haywire. And I just kind of have to communicate, hey, guys, I'll be out at 6.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want
or whatever.
to kind of bring back this point because we slightly touched on it earlier where you're saying, you know, it is a little lonely, or you might want to feel like you want to be a part of an elite team again at some point, but right now you're okay with the freelance. Like, I guess, what do you do to fulfill yourself with your social needs while doing the freelancing? Because like 8 hours of solitary confinement, so to speak, every single day, 5 days a week, regardless of you having the luxury to do it, and that's how you work. I would imagine there's some sort of human connection element that you feel like on a day-to-day basis you're not getting during that time. So I guess what strategies or how do you cope?
You're bringing up, Larry, because again, like in the beginning, when I started getting a lot of work and I didn't know how to say no, I kind of lost my mind a little bit. Like I was just putting on rolling into bed, putting on a pair of sweats and doing that day after day after day. And my wife's like, dude, I thought the idea was to have a more balanced life, not a crazier, more isolated life. Yeah. So I eat lunch at least once or twice a week. And just go out and hang out with friends. Fortunately, too, the scuba diving and teaching scuba diving puts me in a really fun environment with really nice people, and we're all there for the same reason. And that's very social. Teaching something like that, you know, again, you build that friendship, you build that trust. And I'm still friends with a lot of people who I've taught and trips with us. And so it really helped. But again, you kind of have to set a schedule. I make a point every Friday I go out to lunch with friends, and you know, I try to do stuff on the weekends and really make a point. Diving also, you know, if you have an alternate sort of passion, to be really a godsend. Because again, it's social, it's physical, it's the complete counterpoint. You say in isolation in front of a computer in a dark room. So that really helps. So I guess the advice would be, you know, number one, you know, really set a schedule and try to have that social calendar going, because that really helps keep that human connection. And the other part was, you know, my situation with the diving is pretty specialized, but if you have another passion, it's a really good time to pursue it, because if things go quiet, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to ramp up the teaching and ramp up the travel. And so ways I think you could kind of help mitigate that. But I don't think it's just it. I think it's being part of that something bigger. Mm-hmm. Really proud of being at, you know, 2K. I was always really proud of Lucasfilm, or, you know, I was only there for a couple of months, 6 months, and I was an independent contractor, but still, I'm Airship now, and nobody knows what that is, and nobody cares. So sure, I think at one point I may want to go back to that studio life. Mm-hmm. Keeping those human connections are really important.
Yeah.
So before you went off to do freelancing, did you ever consider a partnership, starting with something with somebody to kind of help ease the danger and the loneliness and all that? Was that a thought in your critical process?
Really interesting question, man. So when I was younger, I did something. I was freelance back in the day, so I'm going to date myself, but I was like working on CD-ROM games using soft image on an old SGI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Soft image, so not even XSI yet.
This is 3.8, right? This is way back in the day. I'm an old ass bastard. But the truth of the matter was I started and it was going really, really well, and I was very ninja, and it was just really worked. I had to scale it up. Mm-hmm. It didn't work at all. So I really didn't consider starting with partners. I found that I worked best, especially, you know, again, pursuing that idea of a life less ordinary, the life you want to live. And now if I take on a partner, now am I back to, you know, you can travel 2 weeks a year. Mm-hmm. I split at 3 if things are quiet, and I expect that partner to stick around. So I really didn't. And, I find that, you know, Airship, again, I may end up going back to a studio at some point. I just found that the nimbleness that I got from being solo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's one of those questions that, especially being in Silicon Valley, right? when it comes to capital investment, they're always looking for partnership. That's like one of their key features, because of obviously being able to bounce ideas and being able to follow through and all that stuff. It's just easier with two than one, right? So
totally. No, I totally hear you. And I sort of frame myself up a little differently. I'm like basically an effects artist for rent. You just hire me. I'm part of your team. I'm remote. A studio. You're hiring a human. So all the work that I show is all mine. And it keeps it pretty clean, pretty simple. The other component of that was when I took on those partners, like they're really good human beings and they were good people. I would never want to, say anything bad, but it was all my clients. I was doing a lion's share of the work and I was sort of subsidizing these other folks. And again, maybe I didn't choose the partners correctly, right? There are a lot of questions that come into that, but personal experience really things. And I just found that being the solo mercenary guy, the ninja that can just work on projects that I want to. I don't have to worry about anybody else. I don't have to worry about, how do we split the money? I don't have to worry about any of that. It's just like sink or swim by yourself. That's it.
Yeah. I can respect that. I noticed you're really good at answering the questions that we have for you, so I figured we should kick it up a notch. So on this podcast, we challenge each of our guests with this game called the Fast Five. It's where I ask you 5 rapid fire questions, and I need 5 rapid fire answers. And if you do well, we'll let you know, and if you suck, we'll let you know. But every guest...
Direct feedback. That's the key to a good partnership.
All right, well, here we go. Let's jump on in. Question number 1. What is your favorite cologne to wear? All right. Question number 2. When making a peanut butter and jelly, which one gets more favor, the peanut butter or the jelly? Okay. Question number 3. What is your favorite book that you have read that is not yet a movie? Okay.
Question number jam. I can't remember the author's name right now, but really, really intense. And I've thought about when you start heeing and hawing about, I'm going to make a game someday. Like that book is definitely inspiration for it. It's very, very interesting.
Okay. Question number 4. Who do you think is your, most underrated creator in any kind of medium or content, but just an underrated creator?
So he's a solo musician from Canada, and he's absolutely amazing. I thought it was a huge band. It turns out he makes all the music himself, and nobody's heard of this guy. So check out Brad Sucks. He's the man.
All right. Question number 5. If you could turn any video game villain into your own arch nemesis, but you had to pick, who would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. Blade Runner. What was the name?
Not the Harrison Ford, but the very eccentric guy from Blade Runner.
The Danish dude.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I don't remember his name though. But yeah.
Or in Blade Runner. That dude was gnarly.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. You held up one question just because you were thinking of the answer, not so much that you didn't have anything to say. I'm still going to give you a top 15. You're in I'd say you're about top 15.
That?
Yeah, good stuff, man. And then Sam Sucks, you said that musician again?
Brad Sucks. That's literally the name of the band. Okay. It's actually one dude, but he's just really, really interesting cat and really funny and very smart music.
Sweet. I like that. You shine some light. So that's awesome. But yeah, those are my 5 questions for you this week. Thanks for playing.
Come on.
So I have a general question, Ewan. Being at a company for 10 years is obviously a rarity, right?
Especially in this business.
You're a made man at that point. But also you're able to kind of see where the industry is. I just want your general thoughts on, with everything that's happening, right? We just really just circled down in the Bay Area with all those layoffs and not layoffs, or studio closures and this and that. What are your thoughts just being, falling in love with the industry and being there for a long time, and as a game developer, for any hopefuls or anybody that is still within a studio, what are your general thoughts about how everything's going?
It's tough. We were both at 2K. I have to give them a lot of credit. Like Marin went down, but they really worked hard to move them around. They moved me to, what became Hangar 13, among a bunch of other people. They moved a lot of people to publishing. So it's always going to be changing. I mean, the film industry changing in California is even worse to see. While there are closures and things, there's also studios opening as well. There's new studios popping up, a lot of mobile stuff going on. There's a lot of VR, AR stuff going on. Part of it is really staying nimble, continuing to learn, and not becoming too entrenched. We were talking about being at 2K for almost 10 years, about 9.5 years. I think that entrenchment at the end sort of is it then an advantage. I was becoming stagnant, if I was becoming comfortable, if I was consciously, but so I think will help. And also, again, just like going freelance, you can walk through that door and a bunch of doors open. I know a lot of people and, kind of ended up in a really crappy situation, but right away, like doors opened up, and other studios tend to reach out. And so all of a sudden, what seemed like something really bad, good, and they said, wow, that could be the best thing that ever happened to me. So, open-minded situation, realize that your first impression of a situation may not actually be a good indicator of how it's going to play out.
Yeah. I respect that. Is there anything that you would say has been the most surprising in your experience? Because obviously you prepare for as much as you can in freelance. And then maybe other than the initial dry spell, like, was there like a moment of like, oh, wow, I did not prepare for this, but have to deal with it? Right? Like, what was the biggest surprise thus far in your experience in going freelance?
I was not prepared to end up at ILM. I didn't expect that at all.
Yeah. Okay,
That was very surprising.
Yeah.
History's going to California. A lot of it is, moving to Canada, and a lot of it's moving to London. A lot of it's, if you guys have seen Life After Pi, and it's a documentary that kind of talks about it. It's very effects industry in California is in a weird place. I mean, not unlike the game industry, but I don't think it's as pronounced in games yet. I think games are just more volatile in general. Be a huge bet, right? Like if you make a hit, your studio's rocking and you're set. If you don't, that's the end of the studio. So different. Be surprising. To be honest, there has been a huge number of surprises going freelance. I was a little surprised how quiet it was initially, but you can't be surprised by that. Maybe that was my hubris. I was surprised when things really started picking up. I was surprised when I had to start saying no. Since going freelance, it hasn't been like a world of shocking or anything like that.
Well, then I have a follow-up question then. Have any of these people, and this again kind of gets into personal, I don't know how much you want to reveal, but it's always interesting to me to ask these types of questions because I see a lot of freelancers provide great work for a company, and then the company's like, why don't we just hire you? You know what I mean? Like, has that been a conversation that you had to have in your freelance career where a company's been like, no, look, let's just bring you on the team. How about that? And then turning that down or saying yes, or I guess, have you had an experience with that?
I had one that was kind of funny, and it was very humbling. Again, a great education. So I was talking to a local developer contract, and they said, but let's just assume that everything goes well, bring it on board. And I wasn't quite there yet. I really want a conversation.
Yeah.
One thing that I always say is I'm not relocating. My kid's happy. My wife's happy. We got a great pad that we love. Here, good friends. And so relocation is not really an option. And a lot of the stuff involves relocating to Seattle or so that is kind of one of the funny one was particular studio, incredible people, great studio, great games. But they were working in Unity. I mean, we were very forthright in the conversation when we first started talking, like, I don't use Unity. I'm not, but I'm an Unreal guy. I specialize in Houdini and Unreal. That's it. I thought, I'm a quick learner, we'll all do this. And they were really excited. And not want to do is learn a new engine, carry quirks that they've built into it. So you can do that in a studio and you'll pick it up pretty quick. But I found things were taking a long time that shouldn't have taken so long. So after about a week, I just fessed up, hat in hand. I'm like, guys, I am so sorry, but I don't think this is going to work. And they were so cool. Like, you were making an investment, hang in there.
Yeah.
I think the surprise was, you get to a point where you've got 12 years of experience doing one thing. You're kind of stupid to go and 2 weeks experience and think you're going to be as good or as capable. And they were cool about it. And we had a good laugh. And I ended up just doing destruction for them until my contract ran out. But pretty surprising.
That's cool though. Shout out to them for their attitude and your attitude and how that split kind of went down. Seems like
so rad about it, man. I told them, I was like, you guys didn't have to pay me because I feel like we made a deal and I'm backing out. And they're like, dude, get out of here, man. Here, just send us an invoice. And then if you could finish this up and that up. And then in the end, they ended up extending me for a week or two just to work on their trailer, which was like totally pre-rendered stuff. It wasn't even game stuff, but but that was humbling. And again, I think the key, and this is really important in freelance, is being very direct and open with everybody, people you're contracting and the people you're working with, your clients. And I was just very, very honest with them that, guys, you guys are paying me. You're paying for an expert and you're getting a novice, and it makes me feel terrible every single day. So, let's just, let's call this a learning experience. I got a good laugh out of it. But that was, the Subnautica guys. I want to give them a big shout out, man. They were absolutely so cool. All those guys are Charlie. They're amazing. And I love their game too.
Yeah, I keep hearing about them and them in general from
fantastic.
You and like another friend of mine who's that's really cool.
With the recent developments of new systems and VR and AR, I mean, now that you've always been a very curious guy in technology, from what I remember, right? What do you see a future in all those things that we're doing with VR and AR? Because it's kind of stagnant in this way. Maybe it's being used in virtual production. I feel like the visual effects guys are using it more than games or in more practical ways than we are. I would love to hear your thoughts about that.
I have a client and working in VR, but they're doing location-based stuff, so it's very different. Mm-hmm. I have a really good friend, Laurent, who's just an absolute genius. His own games, does the music, does the program, does the art, does everything. An absolute games, I think it is. But he made this amazing VR game, and experience him go through that experience. I don't think the market is big enough VR. Mm-hmm. That's he's now making, I think, other games for mobile and PC, and he's also like a heavy hitter. So I don't think he's going to have any trouble anytime soon, but interesting to watch. And I had some other friends who did the same thing and had the same result. They're selling 3 copies a week or put it on sale. But in terms of just retail VR, I'm just not sure the installation base is there. The other thing was, I went out and got an Oculus. I used it for I use it when I work with that VR client. Time in that isolated world with my eyes sweating and if it's something that you're really going to do, I think that's really the goal, right? That compulsion loop to get people to play. I don't know. And I know the virtual production stuff is pretty amazing. They're doing some really interesting stuff there. I think on the science side and the architecture side and the visualization side, I think there's a lot of cool stuff going on there. But in terms of just like game development, like retail VR entertainment, I haven't seen the killer app yet. I haven't. Maybe I just haven't seen that one. But XLab's doing some really cool stuff. That Vader thing is pretty compelling. But again, I'm not sure I would ever decide to focus on.
Right. No, I share, I think, the same sentiment as you. It seems like VR and AR is picking up a lot of steam in other industries. Ironically, where we gave birth to it, but we have no idea what to do with it.
Right. I mean, it presents a whole slew of problems that normal games, console games just don't. Like traversal. I mean, that's just like a huge problem. Like as soon as you move the camera, you get sick. Yeah. I played a game, I don't remember what it was, and I certainly wouldn't name it, but it was pretty cool. I mean, the art was solid, and on a moving platform, and I swear that headset was on the desk, and I never picked that game up again. I think that there was that one, I can't remember what it was, Alone, I guess, or something like that. Pretty cool. That was actually one of the better implementations, but even that, like, it didn't really hold me for hours on end. So I'm just not sure. Although it did start in real time, I'm not sure the games where real time is really where it's going to end up making its mark.
Man. Well, I can say this. Looking at my little clock over here, it says we've been podcasting for about an hour now. So that is another feat that you have achieved on this episode. You have won twice. And at this time, Brandon and I usually will step away from the microphone to allow you some opportunity to talk directly to our audience, to shout out, to promote or raise awareness, and just generally shine some spotlight on something you're excited about, something you're interested in, or just anything in general that you think needs more attention than it currently has. So without further ado, sir, the floor is yours.
Freelance, and you got some experience, do it. You open that door, you'll be okay. It can be a little scary at times, but you'll be okay. Couple shout outs, up at 343. Best human beings you'll ever meet. Laurent at ILM, working on a big project right now. One of the only contractors they brought back, so that speaks to his talents. Laurent, you're the man. My boy Rowan, who got his open water certification in a class with 6 adults at 11 years old and absolutely killed it. I'm very proud of him. Brad Sucks, great musician. I got him on loop right now. And Novato, man, you want to start scuba diving, come and talk to us. Amazing people, amazing trips. And of course, Airship Creative, if you need dynamics, effects, Soul Secret Scuba Adventures, some real high-end training, or take some really cool trips to paradise and full adventure video of your experience.
All right.
You guys podcasts are so rad. They're so human, down to earth. And I really, really enjoy them. So kudos to you guys, Brandon and Larry, man. You guys kill it. It's amazing stuff.
Jesus, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day.